I've always wondered which of the more modern Pokemon will have the most lasting impact. We already know that Pokemon like Landorus Therian, Ferrothorn, and Zapdos are eternally viable, excellent in every generation they're present. But when it comes to more recently released Pokemon in Gen 8 or 9, we don't actually know how well they will age. It's possible that a Pokemon that's amazing right now will be terrible in the very next game. But I would like to make some educated guesses. Put forth some candidates of newer Pokemon from Gen 8 or 9 that I think will stand the test of time in future generations, and become competitive mainstays, just like Landorus Therian and Ferrothorn are. Eternally viable. It's not possible to know, but I think I could make some solid predictions here. First up, I would like to put forth Corviknight, a Gen 8 Pokemon that was immediately excellent when it released, and remains excellent in Gen 9. Corviknight has so much going for it that it's difficult for me to imagine it ever being bad in a future game. Corviknight has the elite Steel Flying type combination, which is one of the best in the game with a storied history. Steel Flying offers so many immunities to poison and ground, and offers so many fantastic resistances and is scarcely weak to anything. Skarmory was of course an amazing Pokemon for generations, and Celesteela in Gen 7 and 8 was also elite. But I think Corviknight stands out amongst all of them with its toolkit. It seems like Corviknight will always have the option of Defog, because while other Pokemon lost Defog in Gen 9, Corviknight kept it, as if this is a core option for it. And this is always something that will be sought after. Hazard removal in a reliable fashion is something that every metagame needs, and Corviknight is excellent at finding opportunities to remove hazards thanks to its fantastic defensive qualities. Its stats are very well rounded. They're not through the roof or anything, but they get the job done alongside the typing. 105 defense, 98 HP, and 85 special defense. That's solid. Corviknight has the reliable healing of Roost. It crucially has U-Turn, which is one of its strongest options, leveraging defense for momentum, allowing you to slow pivot and get your frail offensive Pokemon on the field very safely. I think this combination right here of Roost, U-Turn, and Defog is what makes Corviknight my candidate for eternally viable, because you just cannot go wrong with this package. The simple option of U-Turn allows you to keep up the pace on a passive Pokemon, where something like Skarmory feels like it's fallen behind a little bit in the modern pace due to its lack of U-Turn, a lack of a way to leverage its defenses for momentum. Corviknight having this simple option is a massive deal. Beyond this, Corviknight has other fantastic tools. The simple option of Brave Bird is great flying stab, so is Iron Head for steel stab. Body Press is a crucial way to leverage your defense for a bit of offense, attacking with your defense stat, which is quite high, 105 base. And the combination of Iron Defense and Body Press allows Corviknight to be an alternate win condition as well, as another way to run the Pokemon. Pressure is usually quite an unexciting ability, just forcing the enemy to consume twice as much PP, but it's a good ability on Corviknight. It's defensive enough and bulky enough to actually get good use out of it and prevent the enemy from spamming certain moves, especially entry hazards. You can 1v1 a hazard setter and eventually beat them with defog spam as a result of them consuming twice as many instances of their hazards against you. It's worth noting that part of the value of Corviknight in Gen 9 has been the fact that so many other things have lost the option of defog. This could change in the future and more things could get defog, but I think it's worth noting that even in Gen 8, this was a great defog user, and I still think its defensive qualities are so elite that it will be a premier defog user even if there's some competition in the role. Corviknight's impact on Gen 9 OU is noticed as well. Part of the reason that Zamazenta was allowed to be unbanned was because Corviknight's here, and it so reliably answers Zamazenta defensively. Corviknight is also great against Tusker, and is generally such a reliable physical check. It's not just a defog machine, it is doing important defensive work that few other Pokemon can actually do so solidly. I think it's probably the best Rocky Helmet user in the tier just because of how many different defensive entry points it can use to rack up that chip damage. I believe that Corviknight sort of reminds me of the cockatoo. Did you folks know that cockatoos can live for over 80 years? They have an exceptional lifespan. I never knew that. Cockatoos live longer than many humans. Unbelievable. And I think that much like the humble cockatoo, Corviknight will have similar longevity. This is another bird that will live for a long time. 80 years from now, I think we're going to still see Corviknight clicking defog in some form of OU. Up next I have Dragapult. I believe that Dragapult is forever. I think this is an eternally viable Pokemon, and this is an interesting one, because a lot of formerly great pseudo-legendaries have fallen off over time, and these are Pokemon that most at the time would probably predict would be eternally viable, like Salamence and Metagross, which are now quite mediocre. But Dragapult, I think, is different. I think Dragapult is different for some key reasons. First of all, Dragon Ghost, fantastic typing. Ghost is an amazing type ever since Pursuit was removed. It was amazing before that, but especially after. And it's a tremendous offensive type with very little in the way of good switch-ins. It's very spammable. A simple Choice Spec Shadow Ball goes a long way on many different Pokemon. The immunities offered by Ghost typing also give you beautiful entry points. And Dragon is nice too, with its resistances that it comes with and being a nice neutral attacking type. So the typing's amazing. And I think there are two qualities that make Dragapult quite future-proof. First of all, its enormous speed stat of 142. Dragapult is insanely fast, and with this speed comes consistency. This is part of what makes Dragapult so easy to throw onto teams, is because it's so likely to outrun the opponent. And when you outrun the opponent, there's so much more you can do, of course. The other quality that I think makes Dragapult so elite is its simple access to U-turn. This is actually the same as Corviknight. There's a common factor here. Having U-turn is a big deal. Having U-turn on something so fast is a big deal. It makes you so much more consistent. U-turn is a move that gives you information. If they switch, you can just respond to what they switch to and switch yourself because of the way turn order works. It's free chip as well that you can then leverage afterwards for a very free switch. It's one of the best moves in the game, and Dragapult has it. Dragapult has good stats as well, not only the speed, but everything else. 100 special attack is serviceable with such a speed stat. Its bulk is not bad either, 88 HP, considering how fast and good offensively you are. One of Dragapult's interesting traits is that it has quite a high attack stat, but very few physical attacking options, but its high attack stat is still an asset. Even though it has a very limited physical move pool, Dragon Darts is a great option for just a simple Dragon Stab move that hits very well. U-turn, of course, and the occasional Phantom Force, if you want to run some form of Ghost Stab. Not very reliable, but at least there's some form of Ghost Stab you can run. But Dragapult will often find itself leaning more into a special attacking role, and in that department it has a fantastic move pool. Draco Meteor, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, Fire Blast, everything you could want. Another thing that makes Dragapult really amazing is its access to Will-O-Wisp, one of the best status inflicting moves in the game. Very impactful burn, applies damage over time and halves physical damage output on the Pokemon burned. Just such a good status option, and fewer things are immune to it than poison. Poison runs into the trouble of thudding completely against steel or poison types, but only fire types are immune to burn and certain Pokemon with status immunity in their abilities, so it's more spammable and more impactful, I think. More likely to be impactful. And Dragapult also has the insane Will-O-Wisp and Hex combo. Hex deals double damage if the target is status, so you can Will-O-Wisp them and deal incredible damage with Stab Hex. This set is just so consistent. It's so fast, it does things that are just likely to be good and give you an advantage. Can you truly see Dragapult not being viable? I think that this is a new staple in the making. I think Dragapult will have a career as legendary as Landorus Therian. This is a Pokemon with elite level success baked into its veins. If Pokemon were speculative assets that I could bet on to determine their competitive success, I would maybe go all in on Dragapult. I have such faith in Dragapult that it will be good in future games, truly. It's already a top tier Pokemon in Gen 8 and 9. I think that will continue forever, unless they don't put it in the game. That's the only time I don't think it will be good, is if it's not existing. Up next, Rillaboom, who is a starter Pokemon from Gen 8, the Grass-type starter, and an outstanding competitive Pokemon in both Gen 8 and 9 OU. Rillaboom is interesting because it is the premier terrain setter in the game ever since the absence of the Tapus. And it's worth mentioning now that I'm not actually including the Tapus in this video, because it's not clear that they will return in the future. The Tapus are all obviously amazing, and so are the Ultra Beasts. So for that reason, I'm not including those sorts of legendary groups that seem more version exclusive or less likely to actually return in the future. I don't know if Gen 10 will have the Tapus back, or the Ultra Beasts back, or the Paradox Pokemon back. It's unclear. Probably not. But I think that the Pokemon mentioned so far in the video, Corviknight, Dragapult, and now Rillaboom, are likely to return in future games, especially because Rillaboom is a starter. And in a world where the Tapus don't exist, Rillaboom is an outstanding terrain setter. In fact, it was even an outstanding terrain setter. With the Tapus as allies and peers, it outclassed Tapu Bulu in its job as a grassy terrain setter. Terrain is powerful. On switching, you set grassy terrain, which boosts the damage of grass type attacks, gives you some chip healing for you and your opponent, and also activates certain effects, like the grassy seed and other effects that synergize in terrain. Another effect of grassy terrain is that it nerfs the damage of earthquake. I think grassy terrain will always have a place as a way to buff grass types, shield ground weak Pokemon from earthquake, and also activate the grassy seed for effects like unburden and other boost sweeping effects with stored power. I think there will always be some place for grassy terrain, and Rillaboom not only serves that purpose, similar to like a weather setter, just having that inherent utility, but it's also good on top of that on its own merits. Rillaboom has a great well-rounded stat distribution. It's quite bulky. The 100 HP, 90 defense, 70 special defense, that's pretty good. Has 125 attack, which is a great attack stat. And it's even relatively fast with 85 speed. A lot of starter Pokemon have weird stat distributions that aren't really that good at anything. They just sort of distribute stats seemingly randomly, but Rillaboom's stat distribution here is quite nice. On top of the grassy terrain, and access to Grassy Glide, which is its own form of grassy terrain synergy, priority in grassy terrain. Plus a good move pull on top of that with knockoff, Stab Wood Hammer, which hits incredibly hard. Swords Dance, U-Turn. There's actually such a common theme here with all these guys having U-Turn. It's just a good move, folks. It's good to pivot and gain information. It's truly one of the best things you can do. I think Rillaboom is so much better than all of the other terrain setters that we've seen in the franchise, and will probably continue to be a great one. I also think it's likely it will keep returning in new games because it's a starter. Rillaboom absolutely wipes the floor with its contemporaries like Indeedee, Pincurchin, etc. There's just no other terrain setter that compares anymore. It's possible they could make one, but I think even if they make one, there's a good chance Rillaboom will still be viable or better than whatever terrain setter they make, because there's evidence that it was in Gen 8 alongside the Tapus. It was literally outclassing Tapu Bulu and keeping up with the other Tapus that existed there. So I think Rillaboom would be a solid investment. Plus it's an ape that plays the drums, which is just a real demonstration of its intelligence. I think it's important for the Pokemon outside of battle to have hobbies, and what better hobby than banging the drums, getting a bit of your aggression out of your system, plus an artistic pursuit. Rillaboom is an artist. That's something that people don't respect about it enough. But he doesn't view the drums in a competitive fashion like the guy from Whiplash who wants to be the best drummer and is putting his own life on the line to do so. Putting himself through real turmoil to be a good drummer, but Rillaboom plays the drums as a form of self-expression because art is beautiful in its own merits and it is not a competition. Rillaboom understands that art is not a competition, it is subjective. All that matters is that you are engaging in a craft that allows you to plant your essence into a work. And Miles Teller never understood this, and that's why J.K. Simmons keeps yelling at him actually. That's why he was yelling at him in the film and being very mean. Because he didn't understand. Up next I've got Cinderace as another candidate. Gen 8 released 2 amazing competitive starters, and one terrible one. We don't speak about Inteleon. I don't want to speak about him or think about him. Cinderace and Rillaboom are cool though, and Cinderace, actually in Gen 8, was a bit too powerful. It was banned to Ubers at the time for being a bit too excellent with its ability Libero, which has the same effect as Protean, changing your type every time you select the move, basically giving you infinite stab damage and the flexibility of type changing for its defensive benefits as well. Not the first time such an ability was banned on a Pokemon, we've seen it with Greninja as well. But now, Libero and Protean are both nerfed significantly to only work once per switch-in, and with this nerf, Cinderace feels quite a bit more balanced. I think the metagame also growing up and becoming a bit more powerful around it is another factor. And I think Cinderace in Gen 9 OU feels like an awesome Pokemon. I've always been fond of using it. I think it's a great one, whose presence is appreciated. It's a fire type, just a mono fire type, with a great speed stat of 119, a solid attack stat of 116. And what's nice about it is that, first of all, Pyro Ball is an amazing attack with 120 power and little downside besides the 10% inaccuracy. But also, because Cinderace is a mono fire type with Libero, using Pyro Ball will not consume the type change. So you can click Pyro Ball, and since you're already a fire type, it won't consume the type change. And you can like store it for later when you want to change into bug type for U-turn stab or sucker punch and gain Dark type for stab on that, which makes it feel like the most flexible of all the Libero Protean users. Meowscarada has the issue of becoming a mono grass type when it clicks Flower Trick, because it's a grass dark type that becomes a mono grass type as a result of Protean. Cinderace doesn't have this problem. Cinderace also has a great move pool. It has a form of hazard control in the form of Court Change, where it kicks the hazards as if they are a soccer ball onto the other side of the field, which is very strategic. By kicking Stealth Rock over there, it's not something you have to deal with any longer. Genius. And you actually swap the effect, almost like a magic bounce. You get rid of it on your side, give it to them. Incredibly impactful. What's awkward though is if Stealth Rock is on both sides of the field, it won't work. It only works if their side is empty and you kick it over, so it's not as reliable as Defog is, but in the right scenario it can be more impactful than Defog, and it's certainly an amazing option. Court Change is one of the key reasons to use Cinderace. Another one is its access to U-turn. I didn't realize there was a common theme here of these guys all having U-turn, to be honest, but I guess this is how you become viable forever, is you simply have U-turn. That's what Landorus Therian did, and that's what Zapdos did. So now Cinderace, you got to learn from the masters, simply have U-turn. If you just have U-turn, you'll be alright. The most powerful concept in the world, a car going the other direction in the road and doing a U-turn. A car realizing it's going the wrong way and changing direction to go the other way in a U shape. This is the most powerful concept in all of Pokemon. Is simple U-turn. No, it's such a good option to have on this Pokemon in particular, because you get the stab damage off of it, you're fast, you're such a good boots abuser too. Cinderace gets so much value out of it. Plus Cinderace has Will-O-Wisp, which is another amazing tool. Cinderace can feel weirdly bulky. Monofire, kind of a good typing in a way. It's immune to burn, has some good resistances to like Fairy. Good at switching and spreading Will-O-Wisp. You can even run HP invested sets. I feel like Cinderace is a slam dunk, or you could say a goal of a Pokemon. Is there a cooler word to refer to a goal in soccer that's akin to slam dunk in basketball? Because just saying he's a goal doesn't sound quite as impactful as saying he's a slam dunk. I guess I'll just keep calling him a slam dunk then instead, because it sounds cooler, even though he's not a basketball-themed Pokemon. There's very few sports-themed Pokemon in the first place. It's still accurate to call a non-sports-themed Pokemon at all a slam dunk, so why would this be any different? Cinderace, just because you're soccer-based, I gotta use soccer analogies to refer to your excellence? I don't think so. I don't think that that's the case, Cinderace. I would invest in Cinderace if it was an asset. Doesn't this just seem like an eternally great Pokemon? And one that can function very well post-Libero nerf as well and still get the most out of the ability compared to other alternatives? I think so. Plus Will-O-Wisp, U-turn, and Court Change are great moves. I'm right. I'm damn right. Up next I've got Galarian Slowking as a candidate. Technically not a new Pokemon, I suppose, since it's Slowking, who existed since Gen 2, but it's the Galarian variant of it, which was new in Gen 8. And I think this is kind of a cool one, because when I first saw this Pokemon, I really didn't think much of it. But then, as the metagame progressed in Gen 8, people realized that this was a great Pokemon. First of all, very well-rounded stats, really nice bulk here with 95 HP, 110 special defense, and 80 physical defense. It's very slow, of course it's the Slowking, but its special attack is also good, with 110. The best thing about Galarian Slowking is its ability Regenerator, which is one of the most elite abilities in Pokemon, for 6v6 singles anyway. You restore a third of your max HP every single time you switch out. It's the best healing effect possible in singles, it's amazing, and Galarian Slowking is so good at using it. Even Regenerator Pokemon without good stats like this are often viable off the back of Regenerator alone, but Galarian Slowking has pretty damn good stats. You've got a Poison Psychic typing, which I didn't think was amazing when I first saw it, but it's weirdly good. I mean, Poison on its own is doing most of the heavy lifting here, kind of a great type. So good into the modern metagame full of Fairy types. You got the Fairy resistance, you got other great resistances to fighting and enemy poison moves and such. And it's kind of nice that you erase your own Psychic weakness thanks to the Psychic dual typing. Now, the Psychic dual typing is probably bad overall defensively because you're weak to Dark and Ghost, but what it does offer is stab on a great move in Future Sight. Future Sight is a really great move with a very high power of 120 that crucially hits 2 turns after it's used, which is weirdly almost better sometimes than actually hitting on the same turn, because you load up the move in the future to hit at the same time as another move, putting your opponent in a very awkward spot where they're inclined to switch to something that resists or is immune to psychic, and therefore you can trap them or create these checkmate scenarios where you know that they're either going to switch to that Pokemon that you therefore punish, or they're going to stay in and take this massive future sight. So they're really between a rock and a hard place when a strong Pokemon like this switches in, clicks future sight off the back of a great special attack stat, and stabs psychic. It can switch in and keep clicking future sight to just keep making progress. This is part of the key thing that makes Galarian Slowking so good. It has great defensive entry points, it heals consistently, and it shoots off these future sights. And Galarian Slowking was good in Gen 8 before it even had Chilly Reception, but now in Gen 9 it has Chilly Reception, which is just such a buff. Chilly Reception is an amazing new move that both Slowking and Galarian Slowking get in Gen 9, which will first set snow on the field, so it sets a form of weather on the field, and then it will pivot you out. This is so good. I mean, the pivoting effect alone is kind of amazing on this Pokemon, because you love to slow pivot with this. It's so good at tanking a hit and then switching out with the pivoting move to get a safe entry point for an ally. Even if this was just basically like a button pass, I think it would be used. But the fact that it also sets snow on top is truly excellent, because this can give you snow synergies. You don't even really need to use the snow synergies for it to be good, of course, but like if you're running an ice type, which you might be running a Kyurem, they get a little defense boost now. You can use Blizzard with Galarian Slowking, and it's actually pretty consistent to find Chilly Reception into Blizzard combo. Actually kind of a great combo. And it also overwrites enemy weather, of course. A lot of enemies are running sun and rain and sand. You can just make snow to delete all of their synergy and get rid of their weather. It's actually really useful. The Chilly Reception is just such a buff for a Pokemon that's already OU viable off the back of its stats, ability, and other move pool options. Great at checking fairy types, shooting off future sights, paralyzing things, but also now it's a slow pivot. Galarian Slowking, I think, is one of the best Pokemon in Gen 9, and this is just a competitive singles beast. It does so much. It's so easy to throw into a team and just have it achieve value. Competitive singles is all about like safe, gradual progress, and Galarian Slowking does exactly that, switching in, shooting off the future sights, which in the future will give them a bit of turmoil. It's so consistent at healing, it checks a bunch of things, and it slow pivots to allies, which isn't pivoting a common theme. Every Pokemon I've talked about has a pivoting move of some sort, U-turn, and now Chilly Reception. I will say Galarian Slowking is a little bit scary, which is maybe a factor against it. People might be too frightened to put it on their team because of the eyes coming out of its shell. But I think that the incentive to put it on your team will be too high to have that be a factor. And finally, I have a bit of a Hail Mary candidate here. I'm not as certain about this one, but I think it's got a good shot for future success, and that is Hatterene. And Hatterene is interesting because this guy came out in Gen 8, and it wasn't OU in Gen 8. It was occasionally seen in OU, but it wasn't quite that fantastic in OU to be high usage at the time. But in Gen 9, it has really had a moment, and has been OU for basically the whole gen. It's still OU now, which is a pretty incredible amount of consistency for a Pokemon that was formerly not even OU ranked. And I think there's a good reason for that. Hatterene is, in my opinion, the best new Magic Bounce Pokemon. Magic Bounce is one of the strongest abilities in the whole game, and very few things get it. And the guys that do are not that amazing. Espeon's a bit difficult to use. Xatu is kind of just garbage, but Hatterene has some real stuff going on. Hatterene is amazing. And the merit of Magic Bounce is partially the fact that it's basically status move immunity. If something tries to Toxic you or Will-O-Wisp you, it won't affect you and they will poison themselves. That's always so amazing. It actually makes you a really good Calm Mind sweeper because there's no risk of being roared out or poisoned or incapacitated with like Taunt or anything like that. It will just bounce back to them and you're immune. But also you can bounce hazards. Magic Bounce is a form of hazard control. Because if they set Stealth Rock against you and you have Magic Bounce, it bounces back to their side of the field. Not only shielding your team from hazards, but ruining their life by setting Stealth Rock and wasting their turn. This is what makes Magic Bounce so amazing, and Magic Bounce has always been great at enhancing these offensive strategies that can't really afford to run a slow Defog Pokemon or a Rapid Spinner, but they want some form of hazard control. Maybe they have a lot of hazard weak Pokemon like Dragonite or Kyurem or Volcarona in prior gens or something like that. So they just run a Magic Bounce guy, and that does the trick. That disincentivizes the enemy from setting Stealth Rock or Spikes and acts as a bit of a deterrent in that sense. And I think that the meta will always need Magic Bounce in some form for the teams that want it. And I think Hatterene will be the one, unless they make a more powerful Pokemon than this with Magic Bounce, which is a careful line to walk. You don't want to give Magic Bounce to something too good. But basically think of Magic Bounce as a huge buff to a Pokemon. I mean, people were using Xatu in Gen 5 OU because it had Magic Bounce to give you an idea of how strong this ability can enhance a Pokemon. But Hatterene has some stuff. It's a Psychic Fairy type. The Fairy typing is the important part here. Fairy is amazing. Psychic not so much, but you know, it's got some benefits, I suppose. The stats are also quite good. It's very slow, but it has a great special attack stat of 136. Tremendous. Its defense is decent. Bad HP, but just consider Magic Bounce like a defensive buff too. The amount of things you're immune to is such a significant thing. And Hatterene also has pretty nice move options. It's got Nuzzle, which is actually a really rare option that's amazing. Nuzzle is a attack with a 100% para chance. Only has 20 power, but it's really good because it bypasses certain things, like you can paralyze Goldengo, for example, because it's an attack rather than a status move. So Hatterene, one of the few things that can paralyze Goldengo. You can also hit through Taunt. You can hit other Magic Bounce Pokemon with it and not worry. There's a lot of benefits to Nuzzle, and it does a bit of chip damage too to break Focus Sash. So Nuzzle's amazing. You've got, you know, Calm Mindsets, as I mentioned, which can actually be really great for win condition. You got Draining Kiss for a form of healing and Fairy Stab in one, which is good. You also have Trick Room, and Hatterene is actually a pretty good Trick Room Pokemon because it itself is a strong threat after clicking Trick Room, because you have a high special attack. It's actually one of the more aggressive Trick Room setters, and it's pretty good because Magic Bounce blocks Taunt, so you can't be stopped from clicking Trick Room. Trick Room's not amazing in singles, but it can be good specifically on Hatterene, maybe even just in an end game as an alternate plan to sweep and be faster than everything in a late game scenario. So I think Hatterene has a good shot of surviving future power creep and remaining the Magic Bounce go-to. It does depend if they make a better one, but so far this is the best one. And Magic Bounce is one of those abilities that will always have some merit, given what it enables on teams. So this is my little Hail Mary. I think Hatterene has a good shot of being a new mainstay of competitive as well. Even if it had a rocky start, its Gen 9 performance has been quite impressive. So those are my Gen 8 candidates. Now I move on to Gen 9, where I think a very clear superstar of the future is an obvious one that you probably thought of already. Goldengo, of course. Goldengo is perhaps the most infamous, impactful, and iconic Pokemon of Gen 9 OU. Goldengo has shifted the whole metagame around it with its level of power. Goldengo, I think if it exists in a future game, if they put Goldengo in, I am certain it will be good. I would certainly go all in on Goldengo, especially because he's made of gold. And Goldengo also has powerful allies that will ensure his future viability, whether the metagame wants him or not. Goldengo, of course, has the infamous ability Good as Gold, which grants a total immunity to all status moves. All status-inflicting moves like Thunderwave, Will-O-Wisp, etc., but also Taunt, Encore, Trick, Defog, any move like that. And the big one to be immune to is actually Defog, because, well, this is the first Pokemon that actually can block Defog. And Goldengo is an outstanding Pokemon at preventing hazards from being removed. It stops Defog, and it also stops Rapid Spin because it's a ghost, so it's actually very difficult to remove hazards if your enemy has a Goldengo. There are very few ways to do so. Galarian Weezing can defog against it. That's part of the reason it's actually OU ranked right now. So the existence of Goldengo has made Galarian Weezing OU ranked, interestingly. And then Court Change is partially good because it sort of works against Goldengo, but for the most part, Goldengo was rock solid against hazard removal. It's amazing against it. And you know, also it's immune to all status of all time, can't be tricked, can't be encored, can't be anything, so that's outstanding as well. It's just one of the strongest abilities ever conceived, on the level of like a Magic Bounce, but I think Goldengo is actually a cut above a lot of Magic Bounce Pokemon in terms of its stats and typing and stuff, and move pool. Like you'd think having this ability would be offset by the rest of the Pokemon, but no, Goldengo is pretty solid actually. Steel Ghost, actually one of the strongest type combinations in the game, We've seen that on Aegislash, and Goldengo is tremendous with it. So many immunities and resistances here, it's just elite. It's amazing. The stats are not bad. They're not like truly tremendous or anything, but they're pretty good considering how much of a buff the ability is, and your special attack is really high with 133 base. You're actually kind of fast at 84 base speed, all things considered. And the guy's move pool is tremendous. We got Nasty Plot, Recover. We actually know that Goldengo got nerfed in Champions, so in future generations we know that Make It Rain will be a bit weaker. At the moment, Make It Rain in Gen 9 is 120 power with 100 accuracy that lowers special attack by 1 only, which is really strong for a move of this power, but now it lowers by 2, and it's 95 accurate. Goldengo also lost Thunder Wave, which is a pretty big loss. That was one of its key options with Thunder Wave Hex sets, but honestly, even still, even nerfed Goldengo I think is just too good to be bad. It's too good to be kept down that much. I mean, it's freaking Goldengo, folks. He's as good as gold and he can't be stopped. I would say that Goldengo's viability, if it exists in a future game, is a certainty, unless they nerf it even more, which I would at that point consider actual defamation and libel against Goldengo, which would not count in this scenario. If they nerf Goldengo, it's because they are jealous of his success. I'm just saying it, and that's why they nerfed Make It Rain in Champions, and he's still good in Champions, isn't he? So the haters are absolutely seething, aren't they? Just because he's made of solid gold, do you think that's an advantage? What, gold a valuable asset or something? What are you talking about? Just because his father has powerful connections? That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter just because his father has powerful connections. You think that's an advantage? No. Goldengo has merit on his own terms. Look at him. He doesn't look stupid like a cheese stringer or anything like that. He's very smart, Goldengo. He's very smart and honest. He's the most honest Pokemon. You leave him alone. You leave Goldengo alone. Another Pokemon that I can say with certainty will be good in future generations if it's present is Kingambit. And Kingambit is another slam dunk. The Pokemon has too many things going for it. Kingambit has the Dark Steel typing, which is very strong. Its stats are fantastic, with incredible bulk and attack. 135 attack, 120 bulk. Its ability is ridiculous. It grants 10% extra power on all of its moves for each fainted ally. That's a 50% power increase if you have 5 fainted allies, so Kingambit can infamously solo teams by itself if it is the last Pokemon standing, thanks to its very powerful priority sucker punch. I mean, Kingambit has been a top tier entity in Gen 9 since the very first day, and that has not slowed down at all. It's kind of the pinnacle of power here. So if it exists in a future game, I just think it's a certainty that it will be good again. And in Pokemon Champions, they didn't even nerf it like they did Goldengo. I actually think Kingambit would have deserved a nerf a bit more, but they didn't nerf it, did they? It's untouched. It's considered fine in its current state. So what more can be said? It's just so clear that Kingambit is an elite individual with success baked into its very DNA. Imagine how foolish I would look if Kingambit is ZU in Gen 10 for some reason. If there's some ridiculous thing that makes Kingambit somehow unviable. I cannot see it. I cannot imagine a world where Kingambit is not amazing in competitive singles. I can't. Next I would put forth Glimmora, a Pokemon that's been very solid through the lifespan of Gen 9 OU, in a way that is a bit more modest compared to Kingambit and Goldengo, which are just at the top of everything and the universe centers around them. Glimmora, however, has just been OU ranked for the whole gen with a more simple thesis statement about how to use it. Glimmora is just probably the best Pokemon we've ever seen at being an offensive entry hazard setting lead. Glimmora has the amazing ability Toxic Debris, which will set toxic spikes on the enemy field if your Pokemon here is struck by a physical attack. Not even a contact attack, just any physical attack will set toxic spikes on hit, which is insane to set a hazard on hit. Really amazing. On top of that, it gets Stealth Rock and Spikes, so it has all sorts of different forms of hazard setting. It also has hazard removal in the form of Mortal Spin, which is a poison type attack that poisons the enemy and then removes hazards, which is actually a really amazing move that can crucially remove hazards in the face of a ghost type, which is quite a rare quality. And then on top of that, Glimmora is actually a pretty nice offensive threat. It has 130 special attack, which is good. It's kind of fast. Its typing is weirdly alright. It actually has nice entry points, resistances, and threatens the fairy types and such. Some people even run Choice Scarf Glimmora to just lean into its offensive qualities and run, Power Gem, Earth Power. Having Earth Power is a pretty big deal. Also has Energy Ball as a form of coverage. And of course, Sludge Wave for Poison Stab. Another thing you can do on this is run Power Herb with Meteor Beam. And this is a pretty excellent combo because you got Stab Meteor Beam. This is a 2-turn charge move that raises special attack on the first turn, hits on the second turn with 120 power, but the Power Herb gets consumed to have it execute all in one turn. So it's just a huge move that gives you special attack. And then you can use that to actually sweep. Pretty good at this. So there's a few different ways to run Glamora, all offensive in nature, but the fact that it passively sets these hazards is a really nice trait that just gives it this inherent value. Even if your guy just switches in and dies, it's still going to do something, and that's always nice to have your Pokemon just have this inherent value to its very existence. And then on top of that, it has the extra credit of being a good special attacker, having these beautiful traits, great move pool, great set of utility and offensive stuff, and Mortal Spin, which is such a nice form of hazard removal that's unique to it. It's really cool. I suppose it's a little bit up in the air whether Glamora will be good in future games, but I would think so. I think Gen 9 is a tough metagame, and it's stuck on really consistently to viability this whole time, which I think is commendable, and it's a good point in its favor for future viability. I mean, we've seen like Ceruledge, who is currently OU, but it's had its ups and downs. It's fallen down, risen back up. We've seen other Pokemon rise and fall, but Glamora, the whole gen, has just been firmly OU. I think that says a lot. And finally, a bit of an out there pick for me that I'm not as sure about, but then I would say is a reasonable chance is Dondozo. Another new Pokemon in Gen 9. Dondozo is kind of the new superstar of stall teams, and the most reliable answer to physical attackers maybe ever. Dondozo is a mono water type with the ability Unaware, which is one of the most elite defensive abilities in Pokemon. Causes you to ignore all of the enemy stat stage changes. Amazing ability at defeating boost sweepers. A Dragonite could be max boosted up to full attack, and you would ignore all of their boosts and just easily wall them. Unaware is amazing at responding to aggressive metagames and aggressive scenarios. And Dondozo is just the wall of all walls. It not only has Unaware, it has uncharacteristically good stats for an Unaware Pokemon with a ridiculous 150 base HP and 115 defense. Its attack is even alright. And Water is just such a solid mono type defensively. Of all the Unaware Pokemon that exist, I think Dondozo is just the most hard wall of all of them. Now the problem with Dondozo is that its move pool is insanely shallow. It doesn't have any form of reliable healing except for Rest, which is not the most amazing option to bet the house on. It doesn't have any status inflicting move, it doesn't have hazards like Quagsire does, or Toxic even. It doesn't even have Toxic. So that is the real drawback to Dondozo. At least Quagsire or like Unaware Clefable have way better move pools, even though their stats are bad, but Dondozo being so good in the stats department and having Unaware is, I think, enough to just always give it some merit. Dondozo is just the most no-nonsense answer to all physical attackers that we've ever seen. And you could argue that maybe it would be worse without Terra. I think Mono Water is just so solid that I'm pretty sure Dondozo would just be the most reliable physical wall I can think of. And as long as it can do that job, I think it will be viable enough. And it's so ridiculously excellent at that particular job that even though it's passive and limited in what it can actually do post-walling, it's just so good at the walling that, you know, it's been OU firmly in Gen 9 the whole time, so I think that this will continue to be valuable. Those are my choices, folks, for modern Pokemon from Gen 8 and 9 that I believe will have a strong future ahead of them and become future mainstays of competitive, just like the Landorus Therians and Ferrothorns of the world. Do you agree or disagree? Did I miss any that you believe will have a strong future? There were some I didn't include that are very good in Gen 9 that I just am not as certain about, but you let me know your thoughts down below, and thank you very much for watching.